Good evening. Here are today's Tropics for September 27th, 2019. Please note I'm not a meteorologist, and this video is just a collection of my thoughts and opinions about the storms I'm talking about. For any decision making, please consult the National Hurricane Center or your local officials. Now, today I'm looking at Hurricane Lorenzo and the remnants of Karen. So you can see that Lorenzo's a lot less well defined now. That really good-looking eye that we were seeing yesterday is pretty much gone. It kind of looks almost disheveled. The convection here is starting to. The problem seems to be a bit less now, but earlier was having some trouble rotating down shear or up shear. So there's obviously some kind of shear that's keeping it this way, along with possibly some dry air that might be affecting Lorenzo as well. So if you look here down to the southwest of the storm, you can see that there's kind of like this band of cloud that's trying to fire off some convection. I highlighted it right there, and you can see that the cloud tops are kind of getting blown off to the south, to the northeast. So that is a sign of southwest shear, possibly mid-level shear, which would obviously be interrupting Lorenzo and kind of reducing organization and causing it to be weaker and have a worse structure. So if you look at the water vapor, it seems that some of this might be explained by a bit of kind of like a sneaky upper level low. So a bit hard to see on the water vapor here, but you can see on the flow here, it kind of turns around here. So there's an upper low around here, it seems, and this is driving some of that southwesterly flow here, which is pretty consistent with this circulation here. So it's likely this upper low is supplying some southwest shear into Lorenzo, which is kind of weakening it right now and hurting the general organization of the storm. You can also see this upper trough to the north, which is going to be pulling it out to sea, or not really out to sea, but to the northeast. So you can see that kind of outflowed like this, and then there's an upper trough kind of feature around here too. So the combination of these two kind of features are causing an expanding to the kind of like an upper level outflow kind of ridge that's expanding to the west. So I'm just gonna kind of mark it out here. So yeah, so you've got these two kind of lows or troughs, and between that you have the ridge, which is a really cool looking feature. Sometimes you can predict where a storm's going based on which way the outflow is kind of expanding. It's not a good idea right now because it isn't going to be heading east. It's actually headed to the northwest right now. So obviously this is one of those kind of examples where this doesn't really work out as well. In addition, you can see there's a bit of upper level divergence in this area, but a lot of it is mostly here where you have kind of flow going to the west and then out to the southeast. And then you can see here that there's flow coming up here into that upper level troughing. And you can see here there's kind of flow kind of separating these two areas, which means you have a lot of upper divergence in this area. So you do see a lot of that when there's a storm that's kind of getting moved to the north by a trough. But you can see it's generally removed from Lorenzo proper. There's a lot of separation between that and the actual CD central dense overcast feature right here. So yeah, it seems that it's disconnected, and that usual southwesterly shear that you do see in a lot of trough kind of like pickups of tropical cyclones, it's not connecting to the actual main core, so it's essentially on its own to fight against some of that southwesterly shear that you tend to see when a storm is getting kind of moved out by a trough. So if you look at the microwave pass, it's a few hours old, but you can see what's happened to the eye wall. It's more of like almost a curved band in a way, kind of extending from out here and then wrapping in, but you can see it's not really closed anymore. There's kind of that bluish color that you can follow into the eye. So yeah, it's an open eye wall now. A lot of it is focused to the north here, so that kind of it also is consistent with that convective asymmetry, where a lot of it's on the northern end of the tropical cyclone rather than the south. So it does seem that there's some kind of southwesterly shear, or even like south-southwesterly shear, coming into the system and really disrupting its southern side, and allowing the northern side to kind of be really dominant. In addition, you can see a lot of this green color coming from the north. So this isn't convection. Usually, when you see these kind of cooler colors or these colors more to the left of the scale, it tends to be in convection that's causing that. But if there isn't, usually it is dry air that you're looking at, and in this case, it is drier, kind of coming down to the south and wrapping around circulation. Based on this pass, it's well removed from the core, but I wouldn't be surprised if there is a bit of drier kind of coming in, kind of adding an insult to injury with respect to that shear, which is keeping Lorenzo from really organizing much at all. If we look at the cone here from the NHC, you can see that at least the western portion of the Azores Islands are now in the cone, as the time frame has come in closer. You can see that also it's supposed to move generally slowly as it curves, but then you can see it starts moving much faster. Well, it's a bit misleading too, because these are 12-hour increments and it turns into 24. So if you kind of interpolate it here, you can see that, or you probably put a point right here-ish, and then do the same around here, but you can see that it does start to speed up quite significantly on Sunday evening as it really gets caught by the trough and meets the westerlies and then turns and like basically recurves. While this happens, shear will increase and you'll get some dry air from the mid-latitude, so it's likely to weaken. You might see a bit less of an effect actually though from southwesterly shear, at least at the beginning, as Lorenzo starts to speed off to the northeast, and then the upper level flow that's shearing it and its steering are kind of in the same direction, so a lot of that shearing influence kind of gets canceled out. But then, of course, as it comes up, it is going to transition to a next tropical storm as it moves out of those warmer waters, and instead starts relying on the baroclinic influences that it'll be deriving more and more of its power from, as it loses a lot of that barotropic influence that it has right now with that warm water. So it's going to weaken as it does this. It almost always does. And you can see that the wind field is pretty large right now, but as it transitions, it will get larger because extratropical cyclones are much larger than tropical cyclones, even large ones in larger size like Lorenzo. So you'll probably see a very large wind field, and that means the center kind of point matters less because you are going to have an extratropical system or transitioning system that's passing by the Azores Islands, so you might get wind impacts even outside the cone. So you might have the entire kind of island chain be affected by very strong wind gusts and some rain. So even if you're out of the cone, just keep an eye on this because it does have a large wind field and it will get larger as it transitions. So impacts in the entire island chain look more likely now. Now that we're kind of honing into that time, the models have quite good agreement that you'll see very high wind gusts in this area as well in the next 5 or so days. So as the time frame has gotten closer, it looks like there probably will be impacts in there. It's like the remnants of Cairn, so it's become a trough now. It's not really expected to do much because the hostile conditions that it's currently in and will be in. It's just a trough now, and you can see there's also another trough here, so it's probably connected to that, with Cairn being kind of the southern terminus of that. That this is partially caused by the two ridges kind of building in, one to the west, which is causing this northerly flow at the low levels, as you can see on this infrared imagery that kind of measures the temperatures of the cloud tops or the Earth's surface. And then you can see this kind of like the subtropical ridge also causing some of that southwesterly flow at low levels. So between that, you're going to get lower pressures and cyclonic kind of flow at low levels. So you do have this trough, and that's kind of what Cairn seems to be connected to, or ex-Cairn. You can see also it tried to fire some convection, but that northwesterly shear is already starting to affect it. You can see it's pretty abundant. You've got upper level kind of outflow or convective debris moving to the southeast, so it's pretty obvious that there is shear, and you can see the convection shearing right off of the tropical cyclone here. If we look on the water vapor, you can see that ridge that's supposed to steer to the west, kind of west-southwest, is already starting to build in. It's got a very expansive footprint aloft, which is causing a lot of that on former Cairn. So yeah, you can see that it's in the process kind of cutting Cairn off from this trough, and will be kind of steering it slowly kind of to the south, and then eventually more to the west. As this happens, it's probably going to be dealing with some shear from that very vigorous upper ridge, and then the kind of moist air feed it had is also going to be decaying and replaced by much drier air feed. So basically the conditions are pretty much as good as they get for a Cairn right now, and they're only going to get worse. So it's very unlikely that we'll see anything come out of this after this. It's extremely unlikely that it's going to end up regenerating. It's going to have hostile conditions until basically it's gone. So we're probably not going to be seeing much more out of this other than just a surface trough moving around that ridge. So if we probably what kind of gave a sign that Cairn was beginning to really come apart is this ASCAP pass. It's a bit old. It's from 10:35 a.m. EDT on today. You can see it's almost unraveled here. You could make a case that there was a slightly closed circulation around this area with those kind of pretty much closed wind barbs. But you can see it's kind of melding into that trough that exists right here. So at this point it was pretty much unraveling, but it was probably just marginally a tropical cyclone at this point. So the National Hurricane Center continued advisories on it, but since then the convection is cleared, so you can see the low level structure, which has continued to become worse, and just extrapolating this, it's probably become even less well defined, which means it's probably not closed circulation, therefore not a tropical cyclone. So we're not really going to be hearing about this system anymore. More just Lorenzo for now, in the foreseeable future. Anyway, that's about it for tonight. If you have any feedback, I'd be glad to hear it, and thank you for watching.